Hello, welcome to this week's episode of What One Thing, One Business, One Story, and One Lesson to Take Away in Action every week. I'm Hayley Baxter.
I'm Phil Davenport, and today we're talking with Rebecca Morris, who's on a mission to fix what most business owners secretly hate: traditional recruitment.
Rebecca tells us why bums on seats hiring is broken and how poaching, churn, and rushed placements are costing businesses more than they realise.
Keep great people and avoid the traps most small businesses fall into. You're in exactly the right place. Let's dive in. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast. What was the challenge or issue that you faced that led you to your What One Thing?
So I would say that the issue and challenge actually is that the kind of traditional recruitment model is broken, really. Recruiters are paid on commission, as you probably know, so paid per placement. And what I have found is that there has become perhaps a bit of a bums on seats model, in that candidates are placed in a role and then they can be enticed out of that role perhaps sooner than they should. So that is what's led me to my What One Thing.
I love it. So I can completely understand where you're coming from. So the traditional recruitment where you're paid purely on a commission, purely to get that person started off on the belief that they can last a certain amount of time. Yeah. Is that kind of what industry has been doing forever, or?
So that is the typical industry model, believe it or not. And Benchmark has never had that model. We've actually got a no poaching clause, so I've never ever poached any candidate that I've ever placed in a role. However, if you go out into the wider network and you ask businesses that you work with their impression of agencies or what they think happens when you work in a recruitment agency, that's what they'll say. There are agencies who will have a timer will almost start. Right, that candidate's been there a year now. We'll pinch them out, we'll move them over there. And that's how the kind of model works, which is a model I've never, ever been comfortable with.
So taking it to your one thing then, that's going to help other business owners. Just talk to us a little bit about that.
So for me, it's around creating a values-led business, right? It's around helping businesses find the right people with the right values to get them on the right seat so that they hopefully stay in your business long term, but certainly for the right reasons, in that they fix a problem. That role fixes a problem. And obviously you're offering an opportunity of employment to somebody as well.
So I completely understand that. When I worked in IT, I would almost always, after about a year in a job, get a phone call to say, how's things going, Phil? How's the site? And you'd think, oh, what a lovely kind of check-in. But realistically, now looking back on it, I know that that's actually now a recruitment practice to think, okay, we can get another commission off Phil.
Yeah, it's naughty.
It is more than naughty, isn't it? And it's something that you don't think of the recruiter doing either. You don't think of that relationship. Is that relatively standard in the industry at the moment, or?
Yeah, it's always been industry standard. And as I say, I have never done that. However, I have interviewed countless recruiters over the years, and they have disclosed very openly that is the model. So how it works in my business, because, candidates do want to leave roles, and so they should. If a role no longer serves the purpose in your career, you should move on. But those candidates, if they come back to me, they have to sign a disclosure to say, I've not approached them, because I will actively tell my clients, I won't do that. I will not be poaching any place candidate out of your business.
And for a business owner that's concerned about maybe this practice is happening to them or it's coming in the recruitment, are there any kind of questions that they could be asking to candidates or the recruitment firm to kind of help them out of this?
So I think a huge chunk of this is relationships, isn't it? It's being honest, it's working with integrity and having a strong relationship. So I'd say from a kind of the recruiter side, I would be forging a really strong relationship with that recruiter. I would be asking them, what is your process? What happens to a candidate when they approach you to find a job? But also, what happens to that candidate once they've been placed? In my case, that would be a placed candidate gets a little check-in from me once they've started. But then, to be honest, they won't hear from me, because they shouldn't hear from me, because unless I hear from them to say they're not happy, I want them just to continue thriving in that role. And I think from a candidate perspective, really, that goes into having constant check-ins, doesn't it, with your employees? I think more and more, and I'm working more and more like this now, because I'm working with clients far more strategically than I ever have. But a big chunk of that is sitting down with your employees, checking in Where are you at? Are you happy? Where do you want to be? What does the next step of your career look like? So that you're also minimizing that risk of them saying, this business doesn't give me what I want anymore.
So I'm an employer and I'm looking to recruit my next team member. Obviously, you've just shared some things that the conversation that I could have with the potential recruitment agency to understand more about how they work and their ethics and morals and how they approach that side of things. What other things can I do as part of that recruitment process to make sure, I mean, nothing's 100% certain in recruitment. If there's one thing I have learned in my career, it's that. Right stories I could share about people I've recruited. Well, that's for another day. What can I do as part of that recruitment process, working with a recruitment consultant to make sure that I do as much as possible get the right person in the right seat?
So for me, this goes back again to relationships. So if you want to work with a recruiter on a very transactional basis, that's what you should expect to receive. So for example, if a client approaches me, and it does happen sometimes where I get a job spec in my inbox and they'll say, hi Becca, find me a person. And I can read a job spec and I might say, okay, well, actually, I have got somebody for that. Fine. That might work. But to be honest, it usually doesn't work, because what investment is there in that relationship? What do I know about your business? What do I know about your values and where and who the team are and what that fit looks like? So my advice would be, if you're going to use a recruiter, forge a relationship with them. Get to know them so that they can get to know you. So I like to visit my clients on site, not because I'm nosy, I am a bit nosy, but I want to know who works there. I want to meet not just the person who owns that business or the hiring manager of that team. I want to go and see who's there and, do they look happy and what's going on and what's the buzz of the office? So that when I'm meeting candidates, I can work out, oh, yeah, they'd slot in there, or that I'm not sure that candidate's going to really fit into that team so well. They seemed, really like this, and this person seems the opposite, whatever it might be. So for me, it's quite simple. If you are going to engage a recruiter, really, really get to know them and allow them to get to know you. Let them ask questions. The more questions they ask, the more they're understanding who you are, what you want, who's going to fit, and they'll get it right. But also include them in that process. So when I send a CV, for example, so say you're recruiting, Hayley, and I send you a CV, allow me the opportunity to talk to you through that CV. Not because I don't trust that you've read it, but allow me to say, because I will have interviewed that candidate. So, we're looking at this job, this second job down. This is why they left that role. This is what they learned in this role. The more information I'm able to give you, the bigger that picture is before they even get to you. So that when you're interviewing them, you're shaping your interview questions appropriately around what you really need to know. Also, what you might be excited to find out about them.
Yeah, yeah. And because it's an investment, right? Working with a recruitment partner is an investment because it's not, in my experience, it's not cheap. And as a business, a small business that started from just me going through that process. And I used to work in a large corporate environment where we did use recruitment consultancies because we could and all of that.
Yeah.
When it was my business and I was like, I approached somebody, got a cost, I was like, oh my God, but that's my money. And it's a lot of money when you first started out anyway. And there's no guarantees, 12 weeks later, that's it.
Yeah.
That's a lot. How do you deal with that? And how do you kind of help? I know that you just talked around making sure that you're working with the business and you understand what's going on, which will all feed into part of that. But is there anything else that you think is worth considering around process and that investment, and about why, as a small business, it's the right thing to do rather than going out and doing it on your own?
Yeah. So firstly, you're absolutely right. Recruitment in general is expensive, right? I've done it myself. I'm a recruitment agency owner who has used a recruitment agent to find me consultants. Like I completely appreciate that. And as a small business, when that invoice lands, it's a bit ouchy, isn't it? You'll be like, oh, that's a lot of money. But getting it wrong is so much more expensive. And I think we're turning into, and I think this will change actually, but the recruitment seems to have been almost devalued. And I think there's maybe that's the rise of AI, and certainly job boards like Indeed, where everything seems to be at our fingertips. But actually, what that's doing is cutting processes. That's perhaps speeding up a process in some ways, because you might feel you're getting a candidate CV quicker. You're placing it cheaper because an Indeed advert is a lot cheaper than using a recruitment agent. But actually, the cost of that when it goes wrong is still hefty. You've still had to set someone up on your system. You've still had to invest your time in training them and supporting them. So actually, I think no matter which way you look at recruiting people, it's expensive, definitely. And it's expensive to get it wrong. So I would say it is about forging that. If you're going to use a recruiter and go down that line, it is around getting as much understanding as possible so that they can bolster into that recruitment process. You can't be 100%, and nor can the recruiter. But what you can, if you forge that relationship appropriately, you can work together to ensure that interview process is as smooth as possible. But also, you as the client can use me as the recruiter. So I am your middle person, right? So I've got the relationship with you. I've got the relationship with the candidate. So when you're unsure about something, for example, you might say, Becca, something's in my head. I can't get it out of my head. Can you find a way to articulate this problem? That's my job. I've got the relationship with the candidate to smooth that, to professionalise that, but to ensure that I can eke out of them the answer to your question. So whilst there isn't a fix, I can't say for sure when I place a candidate after 12 weeks they will definitely still be in your business. But, with the right processes in place prior to recruitment, but also post-recruitment, induction, that's a big thing for me, actually. I say to clients a lot, what happens when they start is completely out of my control. So I can look after them. I can get full 5 stars from a candidate and from a client. I've looked after them so solidly through the whole process. But once they join your business, I'm completely out of control. So that induction process then really kicks in. And that's where I'm tending to work a lot more strategically now with clients. Part of my questioning when I meet a client will be, tell me about your induction process. What will happen to them when they join your business? How are they looked after? How regularly do you check in with them? This candidate's got a 5-year plan, career plan. Does that slot in? Are you going to talk to them about that? Does that work for you? So, I can have those conversations, but ultimately once they start, I am a little bit out of control. But I'm working a lot more strategically now with businesses around keeping their people, not just hiring, but actually keeping them and investing in them. And hopefully they'll stay with you longer term with that investment.
I think that this spells kind of the conversation that we've had with a lot of people around AI, automation and service, is that what AI lets you do is either A, do everything incredibly cheaply, which it sounds like a lot of recruitment firms are using. I can now get 1,000 CVs in and I can just whittle it down with AI to get 10, bosh that out, and I can get my £2,500, 1,500, whatever it is. But then what you're doing, and I think this is where as service businesses we all need to do, is say, because AI lets me do all of that legwork at the start, I can now spend my time working strategically with clients and providing that extra value. Yeah. And I think that's a really great lesson for all of us in service businesses, is that although it looks like automation means we can spend more time in the pub, what we should actually be doing is spending more time with our clients now and saying, how can we reinforce this?
Yeah.
What would your kind of perfect induction process be, or is there not one because everybody's different?
I think it is business dependent, to be honest, but I certainly think there is an outline businesses should follow, and that should start right from day one. This is going to sound absolutely crazy, but I have had candidates over the years walk out because on day one they hadn't got a laptop, they hadn't got a mobile phone, and nobody was there to greet them. So they went out to lunch, nobody had spent time with them, so they didn't come back. Now I'm talking years ago now. That is something that as I'm more seasoned in my career, absolutely, I will not tolerate. I just think that's so unfair. A candidate has left a role potentially to join your business. So there are certain structures that you just absolutely need to follow. Who is greeting them on day one? Do you have a plan? Day one needs to have a real plan. Week one, you need to have a plan. Which key individuals do they need to spend time with in the business so that they are welcomed appropriately? Systems training, but even who's sitting with them and saying, right, this is where you sit. Here are your colleagues. This is when we do lunch. Just those little tiny details that you need to know when you're already potentially a little bit anxious about starting a new job. I also think from day one, you should be sharing with that candidate when their check-ins will be. So as a rule of thumb, I would say end of day one, end of week one, end of month one, and then 3 month. And then if you've got a 6-month probation, obviously your 6-month probation. But I'd also be putting that in their diary. So these almost placeholders are in the diary to say, that's a check-in, that's a check-in, right, that's my end of probation review. I'm working to that date to know that, this is working. But allowing that constant feedback through that process. Also picking up the phone to me. I will have a relationship with that candidate. If you're unsure about something on week 3, ring me, tell me, let me have the opportunity to ring that candidate and say, how's it going? Are you all right? Are you happy? Anything bothering you? Because I can be that middle person to kind of eke out information, if you like. So that would be my kind of typical rule of thumb. Every client has obviously got their own process bedded in, but I would say if businesses follow that, which is a really simple process, you give candidates the best opportunity, but also spread the load of the induction, right? It can't all fall on one person unless it's a, first hire in a business. And that employee needs time with everybody.
This is a bit of a sidebar question, but I'm intrigued. How have you worked in recruitment for so long? Because it's such a
That's a great question.
Like, it's not for the faint heart. I worked in a accounts department of a recruitment company for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, a year. It was the worst job I ever had.
Oh,
I
really?
don't know how you do it. I was about 18 and I was like a rabbit in the headlights, and I was just like, oh my God, this is what people do. It was horrible. And then I realised it was just the industry.
Yeah, I will say, I'm always honest. That is one of my values. I fall in and out of love with it. I will say I've done it for 12 years, and there are times in those 12 years where I've thought I need out, I can't, I'm not resilient to this right now. But being absolutely honest, I love it. I absolutely love it because I love supporting people, and that feeds into my wider, why do I exist? Why does Benchmark exist? Which is around helping people, shaping people, directing people into the right pathways. And our careers are such an enormous part of that. Not for everybody, but I'm sure the three of us, the reason that we're here talking through this is because we love what we do. And I think that forms a big part of our identity. So for me, getting that right for somebody, that's why I still do it. I love forging strong relationships with people. I love getting to know people. Some of my ex-colleagues, some of my clients, even candidates are friends, genuinely. So, but I am changing Benchmark's model around that, Hayley, because, as a recruiter of 12 years, I suppose my appetite for just having a large caseload of vacancies has changed. That for me now needs to be more strategic. That needs to be more around, okay, got a vacancy, fantastic, I want to fill that because I'm still just as passionate about doing that, but what else can I do to help that business? How else can I help those employees be the best versions of themselves and get them to where they deserve to be? And same on the candidate side, providing career advice. Having done this for 12 years, I have seen so many things. I've heard so many stories, and I can really, really help that now. So when a candidate, and this happens, I will meet a candidate for coaching because they've reached a career crossroads. And I love that. And that's where I now look back on my 12 years and go, yes, I'm in the best place possible now. I love recruitment. I love that I can run a people consultancy that helps shape people's careers and help businesses be the best versions of them too. So that is why I'm still here. And I think I'll probably do this for quite a while.
So how can people connect with you, Rebecca?
So I suppose the easy one would be LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I do share lots and lots on LinkedIn around recruiting people, but also actually my secondary business that feeds into Benchmark, which is Benchmark Pathways. So I share lots and lots of information on there around keeping people, but also what people should do when they're not feeling like they're quite in the right place or hired the right people. So LinkedIn, my website, obviously, and ring me. I'm a phone person. I'll happily email, but ring me.
Okay. And who is it that you would love to work with? Who is your ideal client? And also let us know your website, please, Becky.
Okay. So my ideal client is a business who is not just looking to recruit people to fill a vacancy, but actually looking at who they want, why they want them, and how that feeds into the bigger picture. and allowing me to slot into your business as a, I don't know, people partner, whatever you want to call me, but somebody who can actually add strategic impact into your business. And that might not be providing additional services per se, or it might be. I do lots of workshops. I do lots of, additional support with the clients that I work with. But essentially, my ideal client is a business that doesn't just want a recruiter to support them on vacancies, but actually wants a recruitment partner to work with them, a people partner to support them, and work strategically alongside, even though I don't directly work in your business. Okay, so my website is www.benchmarkrecruit.co.uk, and my email address is rebecca@benchmarkrecruit.co.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
That was a great chat with Becca. She certainly felt a little bit like a kindred spirit in wanting to provide that extra level of service and not wanting to just be on a transactional level. And certainly it was a bit of a shocker about people coming back to candidates to kind of poach them off you after a year and your terms had expired. What was your big takeaway from that, Hayley?
I think the big thing is, we all know, and sometimes we're all guilty of overlooking it, but actually having the right people in the right jobs in your business, particularly as a small business, makes a huge difference to the success of your business. So I think the first kind of 3 or 4 people you recruit into your team really set the scene and the path for how your business is going to perform. They're the people that are dealing with your clients. They're doing everything. They need to be the right people. And Rebecca's absolutely right that the risk of getting that wrong is, it can have an immense impact on your business, not just financially, but also in other ways. So that's the big takeaway for me. The thing that was so refreshing about talking to Rebecca was her approach to recruitment. And it is an industry that, as I said, it does have a little bit of a bad reputation. It is a little bit cutthroat. And Rebecca shared some of the... What did you think, Phil?
I completely agree with that. I thought it was really great to let Becca kind of showcase the process and the extra steps that we should all be going through, and whether we do those in-house or outsourced. But the very process of really sitting down, getting to know somebody, understanding their kind of vibe, if you will do, and then understanding, I suppose, the culture of your business and the culture of the person. And I think that is probably a lot easier for a recruiter to do, because they're a lot less impartial and there's a lot less stakes on the line at that point, because they might be looking at you for potentially 7 or 8 different jobs, whereas we're obviously looking at one person for one job. And so that means we haven't got that breadth. And it's not something that I'd thought about with recruiting and outsourcing before, if I'm truthful with you. I'd always thought that, and it's probably true, that a lot of recruitment firms are literally doing what we're doing, which is running an AI bot over Indeed.co.uk, picking out the top 10 CVs, flying them across to us, doing a follow-up call, and then sending people along. But I think the industry does need to change, and I really like the way that Becca's doing that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think it's also the other thing that I would say is what was really good. And again, as small business owners, particularly, I sometimes think we overlook it, is it's not just about the recruitment's like step zero, if you like. It's everything else that happens after that, the induction process, and some of the things. I feel like you might have done a LinkedIn post about having IT stuff ready when people first join a business. I feel like that's in my head somewhere. But I think that that's really true, because how many times have you turned up at a job and they're like, oh yeah, we haven't got you a seat yet, we haven't sorted your desk out yet, kind of got you a laptop, but it's not ready. It sets you off on the right foot. And I know that we're all busy. It's always the small things that make the biggest difference, isn't it? Having somebody to go for lunch with, or this is where you make the tea and coffee. And it's easy things, but in a busy world, it can get overlooked. So I think that's another thing that people can take away.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And one of the things that we've worked on as a business is forging relationships with our suppliers and trying to get to know our suppliers. And because ultimately, exactly the same with Becca, exactly the same with every supplier, they're looking for you to be the best you can be, or they're going to supply everything at the cheapest price. And as small businesses, we need to choose where we want to be in that market. If we're supplying a premium service, we probably need to be working with suppliers that are also looking to supply a premium service, rather than saying that we supply, premium chef service, but buying our products from Lidl or Aldi or other supermarkets are available.
It's true. And I think that goes back to when I always say it about accountancy. How can you be an accountant that's really helping a business owner if you only ever speak to them once a year? Like, if you don't know their business and you don't know them and you don't know what, like, you just can't do it. It's completely true. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you found one thing to help move your business forward.
And if you did, please do us a favour, share this episode with someone else who's on the same journey. We'll see you next time on What One Thing.